Jamie Bissonnette's recipe for becoming an acclaimed chef includes a heaping spoonful of rock and roll. As a teenager, he toured in a punk rock band, but found his true calling in the kitchen. So he went to culinary school, then cooked his way across Europe and the United States.
Now he's chef and co-owner of 3 restaurants. 2 are in Boston, and the latest is Toro here in New York. He won Food & Wine magazine's first ever People's Choice Award for Best New Chef, and the James Beard Foundation named him Best Chef Northeast for 2014. Plus, he has a new cookbook. Chef Jamie Bissonnette, welcome to the dish.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, congratulations on all the awards.
Thank you very much.
It must have been pretty exciting to get those.
Yeah, it was exciting for me, but more exciting to party with all my friends from Boston.
Well, we're excited to eat this beautiful seafood heavy meal. Walk us through what we have on the table.
So we have hay-roasted carrots. We have a simple, like, bitter green winter salad with anchovies, olive oil. Paella.
Anchovies. Wow,
white anchovies, bocarones.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
A little less salty, a little bit more mild. We have Paella Valenciana. One of the things at the restaurant that we serve that I can never get enough of. I love paella. I love the rice and the sauerkraut burned on the bottom and the different textures of meat, seafood, and sausage. We have a dish right out of the book. Lentils cooked with all the different scraps from running a restaurant that has a lot of salumi and charcuterie. Flat iron steak with almond and hazelnut romesco and charred onions. And of course, churros for dessert. It's my favorite.
Let's talk about how you got into cooking, because normally we hear chefs and they say, oh, it was a grandmother, it was a mother. But I read that your mom didn't really do much cooking.
She did a lot of cooking, and none of it was very good, though.
So was this in your own interest then that you started getting into cooking?
I mean, I loved food. I was, a kid who loved to eat liverwurst on a pickle when I was in the carriage at the grocery store. And I was always wanting more food. Even if it wasn't delicious food, I still was a consumer. Like, I loved to eat food. And when I became a vegetarian, my mother kind of gave me we're not going to cook for you anymore. And she did a little bit, but not a lot. And I just loved food. I found myself drawn to it. And
so while most kids were watching cartoon shows, you were watching cooking shows?
Yeah, the Discovery Channel had this awesome series called The Great Chefs, and I watched that all the time and tried to replicate those recipes.
How did you get into music then? Because it seems like that was veering off the path.
Growing up, music was a part of our life at home as far as I can remember. My father's a jazz musician. He plays stand-up bass, and he's been in the same band for like over 45 years, the same guys. And there was always a record player and tons of records around, and I would always listen to his records, and then I started getting into my own stuff.
So were you the chef in the band?
I got kicked out of the band because I wanted to be a chef, something like that.
We were talking about it as we were introducing you, that you did a lot of traveling. What made you pick Boston? Because it really does seem like we keep hearing from Boston chefs. I mean, this is like the new food scene.
Boston, Boston to me is an old food scene because I've always looked up to the chefs that are there.
Right.
I was close to Boston. I grew up in right around Hartford, Connecticut, in a little town called Canton. And we were 2 hours at most from Boston. And growing up, going to punk rock and hardcore shows, it was neither New York or Boston. And Boston was just a little bit closer, a little bit more accessible. When the train brought you in or the bus brought you into the city, it wasn't Port Authority, so it was a lot less terrifying.
Well, now you have to come to Port Authority because you've got a restaurant in New York.
I've upgraded to the Acela.
What's it like having restaurants in 2 towns? And as you say, sometimes you're not sure where you're waking up.
Some days I don't remember where I am. It's great restaurant people generally have some form of ADD.
Yeah.
So having restaurants in 2 cities is great. I love to travel. So it's fun for me to bounce back and forth. And as soon as I get to Boston for a long time, I get homesick for New York, and then I'll be in New York and I'll get homesick for Boston.
You mentioned that you were a vegetarian, and I noticed that the cookbook is basically all about meats.
Yeah.
So when did you make the transition? Because you were a very strict vegetarian.
I was on and off vegan, vegetarian for a long time, even all through culinary school and into the beginning parts of my cooking career. And a chef one time just sat me down and said, "You're a great cook, but you'll never be a great chef unless you start to eat the food that you're doing." And I said, "Well, I taste and I spit it out." He said, "Yeah, but you don't eat a full meal. You don't understand what it does to your palate." And I really thought about it, and I realized that I really wasn't vegetarian for any major reason anymore. And I started eating meat pretty much immediately and had foie gras and steak tartare by the end of the week and gained about 100 pounds. Yeah.
I have to ask, are the tattoos a legacy of the punk band, or is...
Being in the hardcore community and into punk, I got a lot of tattoos at a young age, but most of my tattoos are just about stories of evolution over life, of where I've been and where I'm going and things like that.
Cool. Well, Jamie, as we hand you this dish to get your signature on it, we want to ask you if you could have this delicious meal with any person, past or present, who would that person be?
I think it would be my great-grandmother on my father's side, Grammy Hilder. She introduced me to a lot of cool food things as a kid. She had a garden, taught me about not to eat the leaves of rhubarb because they were poisonous. But I was too young, and I didn't get to ask her any questions about, the Swedish food that she grew up on, and I wished I could.
Chef Jamie, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.